Everyone, we are going to come to a place of attention now as we introduce our national anthem.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be sharing with you because there are lots of things that we need to get into in this country right now, because Freddie was talking about what's happening in African countries that are standing up. We're African people mostly. We have a situation in this world right now that the Europeans, what they call the first world country, but they have no distinction between men and women. And they wanted to export that behavior throughout the world. Africa has stood up. We are not. But that is not our culture. That is not what we are used to.
No.
People will call me homophobic or whatever. I am not any phobic at all. But what the problem is that people are trying to impose their values on us, and we must accept them, or else. The government of Barbados is leading the charge with this bad behavior. And the people who employ this government, us, have to tell them, you've crossed the line. You know, we know a man, and we know what's the difference between a man and a woman, and we know the purposes of the both sexes. You know, and I keep telling people all the time, I will support that type of behavior when two rams get a lamb. And I'm not seeing that happening. And I used to keep sheep from the time I was a little boy. First gift my grandmother gave me on my father's side was a sheep. I've been keeping sheep from the time I was at primary school. And I've never seen two rams hook up and get a lamb. So why should two men hook up and they can't get a lamb? But our first thing is procreation. You know, sex is about procreation first, pleasure after. Now, if you get pleasure from that, that's your business. But you're not going to procreate. And if you can't procreate, then something is wrong. I'm not saying that a man and a woman will not be able to procreate for some reason or the other, because they might have some problem in doing so. They might not be compatible for whatever reason. They might be not fertilized. But men and women generally do that. I've never seen a situation where man and man or woman and woman decide, okay, I'm going to be the father tonight, or I'm going to be the mommy tonight, and then decide who's going to get pregnant. Never seen it. So if people want to force that behavior on you, don't knuckle under to it, and don't let it bother you. It's normal. It is not. If some person wants to do that, that is a question for them to face their maker and the time comes. If they decide that is the case. But I don't see anybody on this earth that is my maker, and I'm not pleasing them. I am not like Freddie. I don't go and preach and that kind of stuff, but I have a firm belief in God, and I know what God wants of me.
Caswell, you're what we would call a marketplace minister. In other words, not everybody's platform is a pulpit in a church. Some of our platforms are our desk and ministries. Some of our platforms are the checkout counters at the cashier, the supermarket shelf. Some of our platforms, we are on different platforms. Unfortunately, people have interpreted the church to be a place they go to and a building they go into, when in truth and in fact, the church is who we are. You're the church, I'm the church. And we have our different roles. I think the Apostle Paul, when he talked about the body. Not every one of us is an eye. Not everybody is a nose. You know where I'm coming from? Not everybody's a mouth. Not everybody's a little finger. You may not think the little finger is important, but, there are times that you need the little finger. And when you do need it, thank God it's there. Not everybody's an elbow. We're all different. And this is where the respect needs to come, within the context of our society.
If you want to do that, I'm not going to judge you. I keep telling people that is not my job. He has not delegated that function to me.
Right, absolutely.
I am not supposed to be your judge. So if you do that, I am not going to judge you. But at the same time, I'm not going to join you. You will still be my friend, but I'm not going to bring you home for dinner.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
endorse you.
I'm not going to hug you in the street and give you a kiss. I'm not going to do those things. But at the same time, you're a human being. You have your human rights and all kind of stuff, and you have your God-given rights to live in this society. I have no problem with that. It's just that if you want to go that way, go along without me.
Correct.
I am not going to condemn you. That will come later, and not by me.
And it will come from the person who has a right to do it because of the fact that he created male and female. That's the position, I don't know if you saw recently, Caswell, there was a video somebody sent to me of a presentation that a minister of the government of Ghana made in the United Nations that silenced Security Council. That's how he silenced the Security Council for 6 minutes in terms of addressing the matter of gender and sex. And absolutely, we are not going to condemn you. Our role, as I said, I made a note here, we are not ashamed of the gospel of Christ because it is the power of God unto salvation. So we'll preach the gospel. We'll tell people how good it is to come into a relationship with God, how important it is, how it can affect your life, how it can add value to your country, how it can improve the morals and values of your children, how it can keep them out of prison, how it can keep them away from drugs. We will engage with that. But at the end of the day, even God himself allows us to choose. And if we choose to go the direction that receives his judgment, so be it. And if we go the direction and receive his blessing, so be it. But the choice is yours. And I agree with you. We are not going to condemn them. We simply are not going to join them. That is not the only area, Caswell. We also have the matter of this cybercrime bill. We now know the motive expressed by, I understand, a minister and a young man at a Labour Party constituency meeting to protect the ministers.
I think he was talking off the top of his head. It will do that too, but it is also sweeping the world like the jabs, because Britain just had a similar bill. Canada is now debating one very similar, except that Canada put more rights in theirs and put safeguards for the people. We have none. All we have are punishments, even for telling the truth. And I think our government thinks the way to govern is to lock up everybody. They have passed more laws and increased more fines and put more penalties in place for any other body or any other government. in the history of Barbados. Their role is to fill Dodge prison and keep it filled. They're not interested in what is it. Because, for instance, defamation by itself, we don't have criminal libel in Barbados anymore, where you can go to jail for that. But they have reintroduced it under this bill, where just like Sierra Leone did the same thing. So we are following pattern. We are not doing anything that comes from the minds of the people of Barbados that governs us in the way that we should be governed. They are governing us in the way that the Prime Minister will go and hear things and come back and want to implement them in Barbados. Or they give her instructions to come back and try to do it on us so that we will guinea pig for the first world countries. Let me try it out on Barbados and see how it works. That happens with the job, that happens with the cybercrime bill, that happens with the ID card. But a lot of those things people think are conspiracy theories, but then you would hear the truth coming out a little at a time. And the little senator boy, I like to call him the senator, you know, he was almost senator. They don't care who they use as long as to meet their ends. They needed a little boy, Indian boy, and they got one. They put him on the platform to help persuade the Indian community. See how we treat the and exploited that child from 13. You know, and he's so caught up with this nonsense, he doesn't see the forest from the trees. He's blinkered or probably even blind now, to the point where they just unleash him, and he is a more genteel Patrick King. But it cut from the same material. It's just that the one has more volume and venom, while the other portray the same type of behavior.
Let me address something very quickly here. Let me be clear. As I said at the beginning of this show, we're not blocking anybody. We are at freedom and liberty to express our views and our religious aspects of life. If you don't like it, you have a choice. Stay on the show or get off the show. It's as simple as that. And I make no apologies for expressing that. But nobody is going to sanction anybody, censor you, cut you off, or otherwise, because that is not what democracy is. That is not what freedom of expression is. And we have the freedom to say what we're saying. You have the freedom to post in the chat what you want to post. And as I said, we're not engaging a religious debate here. And I am not entertaining it, and neither is Mr. Franklin or the members of the loyal opposition. We simply have made it very clear that our faith flavors our worldview, and that is the end of the subject as far as I'm concerned from here on in. I just received a message that said this, and it's just a caption that the El Salvador has banned gender ideology in schools, aligns with Bukele's traditional values push. That has just happened in El Salvador. So we need to pray and we need to stand up that our Ministry of Education will demonstrate a similar wisdom and courage. That is what we need to see coming out of our leaders in Barbados. Individually, you know, this is one of the things, Caswell, that annoys me a bit with politicians. Politicians seem to think that they are the voice of the people. They're not. The voice of the people is the people's voice. And you're supposed to represent what the people feel about a matter, how the people view a matter. And I can tell you, if a poll was taken today, the majority of people in Barbados would poll against the matters of gender ideology that are being pushed predominantly by the United States, and who have now been able to bring the European Union under their belt, so to speak, to push it on other countries in the world. And you know what, Caswell, they're using money to try to do that. That's what they're doing. And
we, like prostitutes, want money bad, so we would respond to whoever has it.
And you know what the good book says about the love of money is the root of all evil. They say money was the root of all evil. It says the love of it, who many people will pierce themselves through with many sorrows. So when you have people who love money, they are prepared to do evil. And you know, I read somewhere where it says when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, they groan. In other words, you can tell who ruling by how the people functioning. If the people groaning, you know a wicked person is ruling. If they're rejoicing, you know a good, righteous, just person is ruling. And somebody had put earlier in the chat tonight about the cost of living, you know, the supermarket and the bill payments and all of that kind of thing that are going through this roof. And salaries are not moving. You know, we have in these estimates an increase in salary for ministers and the prime minister and all of that. And I think I had mentioned it before. You confirmed it, that they are not obligated, if I'm correct in interpreting what you said, they're not obligated to accept it.
No one who gets money from the public purse is obligated to take it. When the salaries are negotiated, then they're legislated, because they must always be legislated. They have to go to parliament. So when people say that salaries are legislated, they really mean that they were legislated without agreement, but they always have to be legislated. So when the unions go and negotiate and they come to an agreement, then they legislate the agreement. If there is no agreement, the government legislate what they want. In this case, we had an agreement of sorts, because mind you well, they try to give the impression that was not recognized. They wrote to me and asked me to submit proposals. And I submitted proposals, but that's not the proposals that the people wanted, because my proposals were kind of inverted. I had the largest increase at the bottom and the smaller increase at the top. Because, for instance, the Prime Minister's increase in all was about $1,500. The guy who was a messenger in the public service, his increase was $65, and it was about $103 for over 2 years. Hers was $1,500. No. When you give, but you're giving them a 3% increase. 3% of $100 at the bottom, as opposed to 3% at the top, where the top might be $10,000. You know, and the unions sat down and agreed with that. Why I complain is that they were asking for a hell of a lot more. In the last administration, one union was asking for 23%, the other one was asking for 17%. And then when the government changed, within 4 minutes of a meeting started, people introduced themselves around the tables, and then by 4 minutes they had an agreement, 4.5%.
Wow.
You see, but even then, you do not have to accept the money, because they will then send a circular to every, well, it comes out, and every ministry is supposed to bring the circular to the attention of every officer, and it always tell you, if you don't want the increase, you have to signify that. If you don't send in that notice, they will assume that you want the increase. So you can say, sorry, I don't need this increase. And I've seen it done only once or twice in my career, and that was just purely because the officer, when he sat down and realized, if I take this increase, it can push me in a higher tax bracket and I can carry home less money. So he signed up the form and said, I don't want that increase. And of course, he didn't get it. He continued under the old salary. I see the last administration, even though people vilify them and curse them for a lot of things, they try to set an example. They refuse to take 10%, I think, was of their salaries, and they actually paid it into a charity. I don't think the Prime Minister needs that increase, or anybody in her cabinet needs that increase. They might want it because, you know, as you just said, the love of money, and you can see how evil this place is getting. Well, I really don't love it. I might like it a lot, but I don't love it.
How does that salary increase percentage compare to the increase of the cost of living in Barbados?
It is supposed to match it, but it never does. It hasn't done so since before Owen Arthur's time. The public servant salary now, if you look at them, they're no better off than they were back in the 80s, because the salary increases never kept pace with the rate of inflation. But because, you know, Owen Arthur give you increases, but give 2% and 3% and that kind of stuff, and it didn't work for the people at the bottom particularly. Right now, there is a move for people to get the salaries regraded reevaluate a reevaluation of the jobs in the public service to see how much they're worth, and that will take a while. But at the same time, we need money now. And because people have been messing around with the relativities in the public service, you will see the problems where once in time teachers and nurses and police used to get roughly the same amount of money. You know, when you started as a policeman or you started as a nurse or teacher, everybody got the same. But the teachers over time, because they were better at negotiating than the rest of the public service, and not because they were great negotiators or anything, but they had more power, and they said if they didn't get the money, we can strike, or we can pull up, we can teach the children. So teachers, for instance, got a lot of things that in some instances I believe that they shouldn't have gotten, because we have situations in Barbados right now where people, if you're a graduate teacher, you get more money, but you might be a graduate in history and teaching maths. So it really doesn't work or make sense. But because they had the clout, you see, and that is what happens with unions all the time, you know. Right now, we are no longer in this voluntaristic system that people keep talking about, because now we have laws to govern the way we do things so you're not volunteering and negotiating much. And the unions have, the majority of them are trying to stick to that old system while we have legislation to govern the behavior. And they're not successful, so the people are leaving, because, like for instance, the Employment Rights Act, if you fire a person unfairly, you end up paying some money. And a lot of instances, once it was, right now we have unfair dismissal, but we had wrongful dismissal. Now we have both still existing, but it is easier to claim for unfair dismissal, because if you breach the statute, if you breach the law is the Employment Rights Act or whatever act you're trying at the time, if you breach the act, automatically that is unfair. But with the wrongful dismissal, it was a system where you had to, if you breach the person's contract, and a lot of instances, people will tell you that they can give you 2 weeks notice if they put in your contract, or a month's notice in your contract, or whatever, and they just give you the month's notice and just to let you go, and you didn't have a remedy because they did that within the terms of your contract. That's what your contract provided for. No, contract or no contract, the law also stipulates that if you're going to dismiss someone, you have to take certain steps. If it is for discipline matter or for performance, you have steps to go through in accordance with Section 29(5) of the Employment Rights Act, and that will then tell you what the procedure is in the 4th schedule. Now, however, if you bring a matter before the court or the tribunal, if they fire you because they give you the adequate notice and you go to court, you will lose. If you bring a matter before the tribunal and they give you the notice or they didn't give you, you will win if they can show that they did not do a fair procedure. So when I hear union people talking about the act is unfair and it should be amended, I said these people ain't got a clue what they're talking about. You know, the act is not unfair. What it is saying to the employer is that if you have some person working for you for more than a year and you want to rid yourself of them, you have to be transparent. You have to give them natural justice. You got to give them the right to be heard and the right to be represented. That is not unfair. What happens, the employers don't like it because sometimes they don't have a case. They don't have a case against you. All they don't want to do is get rid of you. Because one time they used to give you 3 warnings for nonsense and then fire you. And people say, oh, you have 3 warnings. Now, if those warnings are not tested, meaning that you have a discipline, you didn't go through any discipline process, you're going to have great difficulty trying to use those warnings now in a situation where you can try to fire somebody under the Employment Rights Act in place, because you could give a fellow a warning. The information inside the warnings might not have been true, but you give them nonetheless because you want to build up 3 warnings. It don't work like that anymore, and I see people do it because I've had a case where a person gave the employee 3 warnings the same day, and then say big you 3 warnings so they're gonna fire you. It has become that it became that ludicrous. Thankfully, we have the Employment Rights Act. Unfortunately, we have the unions and the major ones refusing to get familiar with it, and as a result, they hear the employers think it is unfair. Like one of the aspects of unfair that they talk about, if you want to reduce the workforce, let's say by more than 10%, 10% or some significant number, I don't know what that is, but if it's some significant number, you have a process under the act to perform. And if you don't go through that process, the dismissal is unfair, no matter what you do thereafter. Right? So I had a case once where this guy fired the young lady, and they didn't fire her because of any bad behavior at work or performance issues. It is just that they were involved, and at the end of the day, the young lady decided, well, I can find a new fella, and he being the boss didn't like it, and he fired her. I tried to explain to him that was not a good reason for firing anybody, and that gang horn is not an offense for which you can be fired. I told him I got horn already, and I know I could remember when I see the person, I used to get butterflies in my stomach going fluff, 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 fluff. But you get over it. He wouldn't listen, and I told him that his lawyers told him that, and he fired the lawyers. At least 2 lawyers he got, and the lawyers agreed with me, and he fired them. So he went then to another person to represent him, and they say, oh, it was only one person, but he had 8 employees. So if you fire one, and you call it redundancy, you have to go through a process because you are firing more than 10%. Because if you have 8, 1 is more than 10%. So you got, and they try to argue, oh, the employer is small. So no, follow the law. And I think that is one of the bases of which I won my case, because he did not follow what was required in the law. If it's more than 10%, you have to do consultations. The consultations start about 6 weeks before the actual dismissal.
Yeah.
And people then think, oh, we can give you 6 weeks pay and lower the consultation. No, you must give the people 6 weeks notice.
Yeah.
Again, I want to tell people here that one of the things I want people to know from this process tonight is that when the employer now gives you notice, pay in lieu of notice, the Employment Rights Act frowns on that.
Yeah.
Unless you agree to take the notice, the pay in lieu of notice, it's unfair. Under the old system, they could give you pay or pay in lieu of notice. The Employment Rights Act Section 22(6) suggests that you have to give consent to take the pay in lieu of notice.
Right.
So if you don't give that consent, the dismissal is unfair.
To put a housing facility in the center of your major city is insanity.
The Treasury building was plagued with carbon monoxide and carbon from the motor vehicles passing the street. And the Treasury building had some measure of air conditioning and stuff. Now you're going to have people down there who have to have their windows open to get some fresh air. Mind you, out there it's very windy. But the carbon monoxide can come and lodge inside your building. That's when he kill you. The people who making these decisions don't think. That building was abandoned because of the health problems that you were having from it. Now we're going to put people in it to live. I think the better we think that. It doesn't make sense. I've been to Washington, and nowhere around the capital do you have any housing. But further down in Washington, you got slums and all kind of thing. But around where the legislature is, where the Congress and where the Senate is, you don't have any people out there with things flying in the breeze, but we don't think things through to the logical conclusion. That is the problem. Maxine was complaining, she was talking also about Cayman Air and coming to Barbados with 16 people. If they bring 1 people, that can be profitable for Cayman Air.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
because the government is paying them to come
That's
here.
correct.
So they
That's
can
correct.
come in here, they can come here with an empty plane, and they're
That's
gonna
correct.
get they're gonna make money. You know,
Wow.
it doesn't. But the government does not think things to the logical conclusion, and that is the problem that we're having. There are not any thinkers out there. They have the situation where the lady speaks from on high, and the rest fall into line, and nobody can say, well, let's amend that a little bit because it's cast in stone. But I keep telling people, even when something things were cast in stone, Moses dropped them. They had to give back some more. Remember, Brody? You know, they break them up. They had to give back more. So even when things cast in stone, you can fix. You can go get change again. These politicians, they should take advice. And that's not what's happening. And they don't want advice because they put a lot of morons at the heads of government departments so that the advice that they get is the one that they want. Sandals, just going to St. Vincent and all kind of stuff. You know, what is the problem with Barbados developing its pumps then? You got sandals, we got pumps. Something. You know, moccasins and something. We have to develop something as Barbadian. But Stuart didn't start sandals a big thing. He started in Jamaica and he spread. Instead of trying to look for investment from overseas all the time, we have to do what Barrow built the Hilton and said, well, look, he was doing that to show Bajans that you can make money in tourism just instead of just going down Bashiba and having a few guest houses there and a couple of small ones on the south coast. Barrow showed them how to do it big. But no, what the government is doing now is telling us that if we can get big, we gotta get to somebody outside. And it troubles me that our tourism is our main business, but the drivers in tourism are all non-nationals. Even the airports, they don't want to take that national treasure and put it in the hands of the Arabs and the Chileans. You know, and the thing is, the airport has been making a profit. It is that the airport was down in the dumps and they got to do something to revitalize it. They are taking their profit making venture and giving it to somebody else. Why, I do not know. Because if they said the airport needed to be refurbished, Kimar said it on this show before, we're making so much money on that water and sewage tax that you can borrow some of that and pay it back. But no, we're going to get, and we give away the airport for $10 million a year. It does not. The government is not thinking things through, and as a result, we are suffering. And what these businesses do, the money don't end up in Barbados. You know, the most of the money doesn't end up in Barbados. The hotels that have businesses that come from overseas, they collect their money and it's paid in the United States or Canada or wherever the business is. And they send only enough money to pay wages and salaries and pay a little refurbishment every so often. And when they want refurbishment, they get these concessions that the people tell them, I don't join the BW, you ain't gonna get. So what happens? Even like for the service charge, they steal that. So don't get me wrong. The union, Barbados Workers Union, when they were crying about that, they cried about the truth. But they really want to fix it is to get government to fix it for them, which is wrong. But the government always does things wrong.
Before I get into the conversation, I just wanted to make a quick comment about something Maxine was saying, if you don't mind. It has to do with the fact that they are reporting that hotels are making record profits after the COVID-19 crisis. I just want to remind the entire show that the government was the one who guaranteed those hotels revenues by setting up these hotels to be quarantine centers, and the government was pumping millions of dollars into these hotels. We don't check our balance because we don't know up to today how much money the government pumped to these hotels to be giving them money to have COVID patients in them, on top of the fact that you had $300 million in the best program going to these hotels unaccounted for. They need to be audited and the financials published so that we could better understand where those record profits are coming from in an underperforming economy, because every report that came out on tourism indicated that it was underperforming, still has not recovered. So how can you be getting record profits in an underperforming economy? So something is definitely not right there. Water this thing about the water and sanitation, right? There's a whole lot of issues connected here. But this does not have anything to do specifically with the water authority. But it has a lot to do with the fact that the tanks are harboring infestations in them. So I believe that there should have been a regular cleaning of those tanks. That has not been occurring. Those the drinking water for staff at those places should be undergoing tests on a regular to ensure that it is of quality. That has not been happening. The main union that represents a lot of the sanitation workers are the National Union of Public Workers, the NUPW, and they have been floundering as it relates to representing those sanitation workers. And I say that because if you remember the garbage and sewage tax, trying to find the breakdown here for it that will tell you how much money is supposed to be going to sanitation and how much money is supposed to be going to water authority. Out of the monies that is supposed to be going to sanitation, majority of it is supposed to be going to sanitation to run the day-to-day affairs of the Sanitation Service Authority. However, it has been reported, and even the workers have been told that the conditions that they exist under is as a result of the fact that the water authority has not been paying over the component of the garbage and sewage tax to sanitation. Ask the leadership of the unions, they could come and make a statement tomorrow and they cannot refute what I'm saying, that the NUPW knows full well that the water authority has not been paying sanitation that component of the garbage and sewage tax. And the leadership of the NUPW is telling the workers that they can't get proper lunch rooms and they can't get hazard pay because sanitation workers have not received hazard pay, right? Because of the same reason. The general manager of the Barbados Water Authority admitted in the Nation newspaper that he was taking up the garbage and sewage tax to run the Barbados Water Authority unknown to any minister or without any type of permission. So you have a tax which is not supposed to be collected by Water Authority, by the way, because no SOE like Water Authority is supposed to be a revenue collection agency, so that is illegal. So you have the illegal collection of the garbage and sewage tax by Water Authority, and then you have illegal spending occurring by the general manager by his own admission, not mine. He said it, that he was taking out the money. So as opposed to transferring the money over to sanitation so that those sanitation workers could have proper working conditions, better drinking water, because it's a crying shame that the water and why are the workers drinking all the tanks in the first place, right? You should have running water with pipes, with a proper building and systems. But you know what? This puts me in the mind that Dr. Dennis Law, may the Lord rest his soul, built a luscious building over at Vaucluse, and the government called it that you can't occupy it or so. But there was this logic going around that that building was too good for sanitation workers. And I'm starting to believe that this particular administration has no regard for those sanitation workers, because how can you have people working in those type of conditions? The sewage tax is enough to be able to take care of all of the problems that sanitation has, along with the Barbados Water Authority as well. They are making so much money in taxes. Right? They are borrowing so much loans. But I will say this right now, and you will see it come to light. They are setting up the Sanitation Service Authority to be privatized, much like how they're doing it with the Barbados Water Authority. The NUPW, or the minister responsible for sanitation, who I think is Medic, who has completely disappeared from the politics of this country. I've not seen or heard about the Medic since the Auditor General brought up that issue on him involving the corruption in his ministry. I am saying here, if any of those workers got sick, the government should be sued, right? Because there's no way you should be having workers coming to work every day, having to drink out of a infested water tank. We should be having adequate running water facilities through pipes for those workers with filters, with proper filtration systems, that they could be Water is essential, right? And there's no reason why workers in this day and age should be drinking out the water tanks. But think about the fact that this administration rolled out a program where they put water tanks all through Barbados for people to drink from, taking us back into the days of the standpipes. Ask yourselves how many of the water tanks and communities have infestations in them that people, and particularly a lot of people in St. John as well, having to go to those black water tanks. Ask yourself how much millipedes are in there, and the water authority is not going around and cleaning them. So this here represents a much larger issue that may not only impact those sanitation workers, but a lot of people in the communities. Think about it. You live in a community impacted by this water problem. You have a water tank. So you have to go to the water tank on mornings to collect water, to bathe, whatever. It already has an infestation in it. So you're using the infested water on morning. And then you have to go to work and still drink infested water all over again through no fault of your own. You're paying a water bill, and still you have to pay a garbage and sewage tax, an illegal tax, by the way, and you're not even connected to the sewage plant, right? But the same hotels and the same people who are connected to the sewage, they pay almost the same or a lower rate as a residential person, and they're the ones who are messing up the sewage thing. 5% of people in this country are connected to a sewage, but 95% of us have to pay for that. And the least you could do is to ensure that the persons who have these community tanks, and I will stretch here now and say that an investigative report should be done on who has the contract or who had the contract to roll out these tanks, and if they had any clause in it to maintain those tanks, and the person or the contractor should be made to come to the public and say why you failed on your duty to go around and maintain those water tanks, because you're putting the workers and sanitation lives at risk while collecting taxpayers' money. So that is my 2 cents on that scenario for now.
The workers have been bringing the attention of these conditions to management, but they treat the workers at sanitation like the garbage that they collect. They don't seem to be represented properly by either the two units, because the other two units have members there, and that is why you see that there was a mass exodus last year or year before now, is it, because I'm getting mixed up with the New Year's, from sanitation and the BWU to Unity Workers Union. And at least then they start to have some sort of response, because we took action one morning when we called out the workers in Unity. The fellow said from the other union came out and said, oh, we can support our brothers. So no trucks left the yard that morning. You just don't, all you have to do to create chaos in this place is sanitation not to work, because people believe that they're not worth it. But if not for them, this place would be worse than it is now. It'd be a place. But they don't have the necessary equipment. They don't treat them well. You hear the conditions at the landfill where the workers have to endure. Similarly, at the metal dump, the floor of the staff facility fell in after a few weeks or something. So it's just dropping. You know, they build all kind of foolishness for these people. They don't treat them well. And I remember the only general manager I've treated them well for a long time there was a guy called, the manager, don't call him general manager, was a fellow called Stanton Alling, and they decided they're going to fire him, you know. Well, the workers stopped working as soon as they heard. They left his trucks on the road. They said, they fired my boy, because he looked out for them. He provided facilities for them. Since he is gone, they brought back 2 retirees to run sanitation now. One is Miss Jones, who is Roger Ford's sister, the attorney at law who does all the government's work, them no rather than let the solicitor general do the work. His sister, and another fellow, retired guy called Nichols, he's 70 years old. We have people who are trained, who are qualified in solid waste management, and what they do to make their lives miserable. Some of them to put them to work on a desk. You don't work on a desk when you're doing solid waste management. And bring back retirees who ain't got no real training in the area. They just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and their parties were in power when they got promoted and that kind of thing. And then and what you do, then you bring Al Padmore and to be talking head, and so he talks pretty, but nothing really happens for the workers. We have a situation at the cemetery where these guys get paid for digging graves, and they are assigned a grave, and they dig, and 4 to 5 feet later, down after they dig, they'll find that the body that has been using that grave and finished using it yet, and they go carry it back over and go and dig another one. You know, they don't get paid for that work. And you go in and find a body that has not been decayed. Then when they say the body ain't finished using it yet, you usually open the grave about 5 years or so later. But some people persist, and they decide they may want to left this earth too fast, and down there the body is still decaying, and when you open the grave you find a decaying body, and they refuse to pay them for digging up 5 feet of grave. They close it back over and give them the next, and then they get paid for that. They treat them like dirt, like the dirt that they dig, and nobody is responding to them. We try, and ever so often, in order to get action, we have to stand up. Like this week alone, my members led the charge with the water, and of course I backed them immediately. When because under the law, the employer must provide clean water for you, but also the Safety and Health at Work Act again, you got to provide a safe place to work, a safe system of work, and you can refuse to work under Section 104 of the Safety and Health at Work Act. You can refuse to work in conditions that are dangerous to your health. Well, drinking millipede water, they tell me they got something called hog lice in the water and millipedes, but I don't know what hog lice is. I really don't know. I don't think you should be drinking the water that's while swimming. No, the problem with this with the government is stuff that the last government was putting in place a system that would have been given the people better drinking water, but they didn't do it, so nobody else to get the credit for it. So they abandoned the project. Dr. Eswick, he was responsible for the water resources, and he had a plan in place to provide 4 small desalination plants. And if they had allowed that project to go on, the people in St. Lucie and St. John and all over the place would have been getting clean water rather than the pretty water that you get. It's multicolored water, and you wouldn't be considering giving us jobby water to drink because we would have got water in abundance. But unfortunately, we in Barbados, like these politicians who want to make a legacy for themselves, and rather than, that's why we rush the Republic Day, because Republic Day now is a mere monthly thing, right? So the water tanks would have been a Frandl Stewart thing. The desalination plants, the mini ones, they would have been a Frandl Stewart administration thing, a Frandl Stewart thing. The Public Accounts Committee would have 13 members. Ralph is one. He will chair it, but he will not control it, simply because it goes by majority vote. So if Ralph wants to discuss, let's say X, the committee might want to discuss something else. You would recall that when Bishop Adderley was chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, all they investigated not what wasn't current government things the government doing. They were more interested in checking what happened and to put lashes in the Democratic Party administration, because that is what the government allow you to get going, or not, you're gonna get a quorum. It's as simple as that. You know, they did transport board, they were doing all kind of stuff. I was a member of the Public Accounts Committee, but then when they did transport board, I had to recuse myself because I knew more about the transport board because of having some membership there, and I was representing 1 or 2 of the people who would have been involved, so I couldn't be taking instructions from them and then questioning them before the Public Accounts Committee.
The bill was passed in the lower house, it's a Bitcoin bill. However, they are taking it to a senatorial committee, parliamentary committee in the Senate to consult with the respective stakeholders, all of those persons who have an interest they'll be inviting those persons to come and to contribute. And she said that there's room for amendments to the cybercrime bill. So that is part of the recommendations that we made during our press conference. I guess we should give ourselves a slight round of applause for being able to push back the government on this one. What they did last is what they should have did first. I don't know if you guys listened to the Barbados Labour Party meeting over the weekend, but you had a whole set of politicians, especially Kerry Simmons. He attacked the Marcel show. You say you don't listen to that film, right? And they were speaking about, the guy Adrian Donovan, Aki Donovan, was speaking about the fact that there was jobby all over the street. And he was saying jobby, right? And Kerry Simmons is saying that, because it was attempted to throw some shade at Mr. Thorne, and saying that the government is going to spend $600 million in a definitive swap to upgrade the South Coast sewage plant, because when the Dems were in power, it was rolling all over the streets. But then it came to mind that, wait. At least, and not justifying it on the streets, but at least it was not in our water what they're planning to do. I want to remind Barbadians that this tertiary level sewage plant to put the jobby water in our pipes is still very much on track, and it's still very much going ahead. I want us, and this is right in the heart of Mr. Thorne's constituency, because they said that he did not raise his voice to speak about the South Coast sewage plant in protection of the residents. So, us being the opposition here, we started this fight about clean water.
Yeah.
We started this fight about not accepting this jobby water business, and now they are going ahead with the $600 million project, as was said by Kerry Simmons in the most vile way, to try to bring that on stream. And I wanted to say that the people in St. Lucia and St. Peter and those places who are having issues with water is because the aquifer down that side was destroyed. And I saw the Prime Minister trying to cut off a lady who was making that statement at the St. Peter speech, right? Because they destroyed the aquifer down there when they built that port on the Seamout, right? And that is why those people down there have all of this pretty color water. Remember, in the St. Philip, St. John, St. George areas, Bourmiston, what they're doing to Bourmiston up there as well. They're starting the jobby water business at the Bourmiston pumping station, right? So it is not only a situation where you're housing infestations now in water tanks, right? But you're putting it directly into the water stream, into all of our pipes. The next point that, and the final point is, you remember, right? And this needs to be investigated as well. Anderson Cherry had some pink garbage cans around Barbados. I remember them very well. And as soon as the government changed, Cherry's garbage cans were completely removed, because he said that he wanted to put one of those pink garbage cans outside everybody's house to be able to do recycling and to collect that waste to do recycling. That was Anderson Cherry's vision. When the government changed, the government gave somebody else that contract, and they gave every resident in Barbados a free garbage can.
$8 million for those garbage cans.
And up to now, we have no idea really of any transparency and using the Sanitation Service Authority to be doing things like that. So I am saying here that we need to see the contract about those garbage cans, and we also need some greater transparency both at Water Authority and Sanitation, because the government has been using those entities to be issuing out contracts to contractors, and Lord knows how many kickbacks are coming back this way. So if Mr. Cherry could come and tell us what happened, because he has a story about it, what happened there but with those garbage cans, you will see that this thing has started from the very dead beginning.